episode of Pit Lane Parlay.
Welcome to another episode of Pit Lane Parlay. I am your host, Mike Jokum. Jess joins me, and joining us this morning is Genesis 300 winner Scott Dixon. First off, Scott, how are you, and congratulations.
Yeah, doing great. It's definitely a fantastic weekend, and got back to somewhat a little bit of normalcy and being back in the car. So, I think that was the biggest thing for me, was just getting back on track and not having to race in virtual worlds and things like that. So it was a little bit weird with no fans and that kind of separation and all that we had to have over the weekend. But it's a great Monday, especially after the weekend that you've won. Yeah,
definitely. You getting out of the car and there being nobody there was kind of shocking to see after so many years of watching racing, and big celebration after the race. But with that being said, this is the 16th straight year you've won a race, 18 overall, which ties AJ Foyt. So when you're mentioned alongside of somebody like AJ Foyt, how much does that mean to you?
It means a lot. I think there's, over the last few years with AJ Foyt and, the Andretti's and the Unses and they're, to even be mentioned in those lists is, it's amazing. I'm not a big person for looking at stats. I think they're, definitely things that you kind of reflect on once you're out of racing, but it definitely became, a topic of discussion for the last, 3 or 4 years. And it's amazing. I think it kind of puts a lot of, it back on to the people that helped me get here, and whether it's my parents or, the investors that, put in their hard-earned money, when I was just a teenager and kind of, it does make you reflect a lot. So, it feels great to be mentioned and we'll keep our head down here and try and win a few more races definitely in the next few years.
Okay, so kind of off racing, but how is life with the new baby in the house?
Yeah, it's been actually really good. I think when you look at timing with how everything happened, it was kind of perfect. We had Kit, kind of the end of December, and actually my off season had been really busy because I'd kind of loop of the Ganassi endurance races and things like that, just because the GT program had come to a finish. So joined Wayne Taylor Racing, so that the additional testing, and then I did the race in Australia at Bathurst 12-hour with Aston Martin. So, I had to do a test in Spain and a few, so I was kind of bouncing around a lot. And then we had the Daytona 24-hour race and then down to, Australia. So I didn't get a whole lot of time at home. And then when all this happened, it's just, it's been great, to be able to spend, these precious days, I think, at home, with Poppy and Tilly as well, while they've been, kind of virtual learning with school and all that kind of situation. So, he's been amazing. He was sleeping through the night from 3 months on, from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., which, is for any parent, that's a big breakthrough. So that definitely helped, I think, get some peace, through that period. But I think for a lot of people, this is, it's been nice to kind of get back to, one-on-one with your loved ones and reflect a lot. And for me, the timing was just perfect.
Yeah, family time has definitely been important during this.
Yeah, so I'm going to piggyback off Jess's question here. Is it difficult to stay in a workout routine with a newborn and 2 kids at home who are doing that e-learning?
It was and it wasn't. I think, just with the e-learning stuff, their school, the international school here, they're in French immersion. So, it's a little bit different with how their program works. But because the classes are quite small, there's only 10 or 11 of them in each in Poppy and Tilly's class. So, they were set up, and so from 8:30 till lunchtime, we didn't, they were in class, and then they would continue on till 3 p.m. So that structure actually really helped us, I think, through that process, and still able to get my training in the morning, and then also in the afternoon. A lot of things changed as far as equipment. We use a lot of reaction tools these days with like Synaptic and a lot of those pieces we couldn't utilize, but even sort of 3 weeks back, we started back on the Honda HPD, simulator, which are pretty intense, days of, trying to get prepped. And I think especially for Texas, that was a big key for us because we were one of the few teams that hadn't tested there with, either a rookie or done the tire test. So we spent a lot of time, trying to figure out how to help our cars, and, all three Ganassi cars were super fast, and, it was looking definitely for a 1-2 finish there with Felix, who was going real strong in the race too, and unfortunately got slipped up there with some lap traffic. So, it was. I would say it was pretty consistent. If I think because we had more spare time, because we weren't traveling. I typically travel on a plane, 3 to 4 times a week. To have that downtime, training was actually stepped up a little bit more, I think.
Obviously, Saturday night was the first race with the aeroscreen. Were there any visibility issues at night with it, with the lights or anything like that?
No, it was actually. I thought it was a little better. I think a lot of us were a little skeptical. The race time actually got moved up. I think we were initially meant to run at like 8:30, and then because of NBC prime time, we got moved up to, I think, just after 7 o'clock. And that can be pretty bad for us, just because turns 3 and 4, you kind of have a whiteout, and then you go into a blackout when you get into turn 4, and there's a period of time where you don't actually see too much, just because of the sunlight. And I actually thought it was a little bit better with the screen. A lot of us were unsure of what visors to wear, just because, even at the end, we weren't sure we were going to finish under, nighttime, instance. So it was pretty good. I think I had a lot of debris as far as, rubber marks and things like that, especially on the left side when we were stuck in some traffic there for, the second or third to last stint. But the tear-offs worked perfectly. I think we took a tear-off off every stop we had. So ultimately it worked flawlessly, and even in the hot conditions, it was extremely hot, really humid. But the helmet cooling and all those situations, I think, IndyCar had done a great job.
Good insight. Thank you.
Yeah. So kind of going off of your answer there was part of my next question, but did the tear-offs seem to slow down the pit stops at all? And part 2 of that is, did the hotter temperatures in cockpit make too much of a difference, or was that helmet cooling really helpful?
The helmet cooling was, I think without that, it could have been quite tricky. We have other ways of cooling too, like through the front wing and nose box, which they didn't actually. They didn't have those open for the weekend, which was kind of strange. IndyCar decided not to go with those. Maybe it was a supply issue or something like that, which I think so. In the future, we do have additional cooling. I thought those, when I tested at the Speedway last year, were quite significant. So yeah, I think, the cooling and all those situations, they've done a very good job. As far as the pit stops, that was going to be tricky for us, right? Because typically you're waiting on fuel, because full stint maybe takes about 8 seconds or a little more on fuel. So there was a lot of pressure this weekend, because we're restricted to only being able to run 35 laps or 35 green laps, that it made fuel only about a 4-second process. But we still had to wait on tires. But yeah, at no point, I don't think, through the night, the tear-offs were done in probably 2 or 3 seconds. So plenty of time for everybody to get the tires changed and fueled, and tear-offs were no issue whatsoever.
So we've got approximately a month off before the next race. Are you looking forward to the NASCAR doubleheader, or how do you think that's going to go?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. The only bad side to it is that it hadn't happened earlier. I think with Roger and the Penske Corporation kind of behind this, and I think everybody's close ties, or much closer now, between IndyCar and NASCAR. There was a period where they didn't really like to do anything together, where they're sharing a lot, even if it's the process. NASCAR had been doing the COVID precautions for several races now, and we were able to analyze that and use a lot of their information to help us get to Texas flawlessly as well. So I think having those weekends together, unfortunately, I think last week they announced that it was going to be no fans. I know they were pushing extremely hard to have, at least for the IndyCar, it was going to be the first event, and possibly for NASCAR too, to have fans there. So that's a bit of a bummer for sure. But yeah, I think it should be done more often. There was talk of the Charlotte Roval being in that position, and maybe some events this year might be tricky, but definitely into the future. So it's good to see both NASCAR and IndyCar working together, and hopefully these venues and races can be really promoted well and help out both sides.
I think it would be fun for sure.
Yeah, so I agree there. One final kind of Texas-based question. Obviously, as we saw, the track was essentially one groove all night, whether it was the traction compound left over or the hot temperatures. Is there anything the track could do in the future to improve and add in the second groove?
Yeah, the second groove is always difficult. The traction stuff, I think, talking to NASCAR people, it kind of needs to be activated. And they say, once you get a few cars start running a little bit higher and then higher again, and you typically get that in sort of more of the back of the pack. But the way that their tires work are quite different to what we have. So, I think in the future, if you could have, one practice session or a couple where you just actually have to run the second lane. We've talked about this for many years where, you can get that process, get the rubber up there and get it working. I think, I don't know, I never really had too much of a problem passing cars when I needed to. There were some portions of the race, we dropped back to third after a bit of a fumble in the stop. And, we were able to, utilize, especially going into that higher line and to pass people. Obviously, our car was very good in the race, and Felix, passed, I think, all the way from eighth up to second at one point. And there were big movers like Con Daly. So, it's always a topic of conversation. I think you got to be careful with IndyCar and the fact of getting the pack too big. And we've witnessed that in the past where, if you can make that second lane too easy by having a load of downforce on the car, then you just have a big pack of cars. And for us, that's not the safest thing to do. So, I don't know. I thought the conditions were not so bad. Can it be better? Absolutely. We didn't have a tire that was made for Texas. I think Firestone as a partner are fantastic, and because of the shutdown, they were unable to make the tires that we needed. But it just shows how durable and great their tires are to be able to be applied to a track they weren't necessarily made for. So short answer, I guess, yep, we can definitely do something to help that in the future, and I think it's always a topic of discussion each time we leave Texas.
Yeah, hats off to Firestone for having at least from what I can remember, no tire pops or flat tires or anything throughout the race, despite not having run that tire set in a race until Saturday night.
Yeah, it's they're the safest tire in the world. We've never had an issue with Firestone, and they continue to be great partners. And as you said in the race, that's why I said after practice, I'm like, oh, even after the race, I feel like we could have run full distance, but they want to be, they definitely want to make sure that everything's durable and where they need to be. And because it was unproven, they were maybe on the side of being a bit careful, but we'll it's just such a crazy situation that we've all found ourselves in that it is what it is, and everybody had to make the best of it.
Yeah. So speaking of it being a crazy situation, now the schedule has changed. And so you have basically a month off. Do you have any, I guess, fun plans for this month before your next race?
A little. Our kids actually this is their first day of summer break, so they finished last Friday. They start their horse riding lessons and stuff back as normal today actually. I think we're doing a trip actually out to Zion National Park, so hopefully that goes smoothly. We were meant to be back in the UK through this portion as well, but I think there's a bit of a travel ban and quarantine going on there at the situation. So, yeah, I don't know. I think there'll be lots of backyard camping at our home in Indianapolis, and lots of bike riding and things like that. So nothing crazy, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. Each year we try and get to one of the national parks here in America to check it out, and hopefully we're able to continue with that trip here in a couple of weeks.
We're definitely having perfect weather for that backyard camping. So I think that's a fun idea.
I agree.
Yeah, it's beautiful here today too in Philly. So I'm going to go with a non-racing question here, something we've been doing all 2020. Scott, if you had to add one song or one musician to our Spotify playlist that you listen to either before the race or in pit fit when you're training, who would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one, man. I don't know. I love, I'm mixed across the board, but, U2 is always a strong one. their list. AC/DC, got to go with an Aussie one, you know. So yeah, I don't know. It depends on kind of what mood. I think AC/DC is good for the start because you're kind of rocking out and away you go. But I don't know, a bit of Thunderstruck maybe.
All right, I like it.
So I always like to ask kind of a fun question also. What is your spirit animal and why?
A spirit animal. I don't know. I think most men probably want to say a tiger or a lion or something crazy like that. I don't know. I like dolphins. I don't know. They're kind of cute. They're smart and who doesn't love the water?
Hey, and they kill sharks, so they're still pretty.
There you go.
Pretty
They're
cool.
tough. They're tough.
Honestly, I didn't know that, so I've learned something.
They do.
Yeah, wow. I'm honestly a little speechless right now. So I will take it back to racing here. This is the first year that Michael Kanaan has been on the Ganassi side. What can you say about Michael as an engineer, and do you think he had a strong hand in the fact that really all three of the Ganassi cars were strong this weekend?
Yeah, the Canaan's been great. You know, I think it's an area we had a lot of changes actually in the off season on the engineering group, just to mix a few different things up. And Chris Simmons, who's always been on the 9 for a long time, actually moved into more of a managerial role. You know, and then we also had a lot of people coming over from the Ford GT program, which was somewhat dissolved. Ford pulled out, so it's. You know, I think for us, we were kind of thin there for a little while. You know, we even our advanced engineering group, you know, was kind of light. So I think it's brought everything back to where we need to be. And, you know, I think a fresh set of eyes too from, you know, like Canaan's, point of view, I think has been nice. You know, I think for me, even, you know, being part of this team for 18 or 19 years, a lot of personnel are the same, which is a fantastic thing to be able to have. But you kind of get stuck in your ways too. So it's been nice to have, you know, just a little bit of a different perspective on somewhat of even the process, but also, you know, there were some areas last year that we struggled at. Iowa, even though we finished second, it was really just because, you know, strategy paid off. And even Indy, you know, our speedway program, especially in qualifying the last couple of years, even though, you know, I've sat in the pole, 3 times and, you know, had the opportunity probably 4 or 5. But the last couple we've kind of lost our ways a little bit, or maybe the other teams have just, you know, excelled a bit more. So there's definitely some, you know, low hanging fruit and some opportunities I think that we had missed just because we were kind of so, you know, down a a rabbit hole that we didn't really look at. So he's been great. You know, he's very relaxed. He's, you know, been a great person I think to throw into the mix as well. You know, it's got to be someone that works well with a group that's, you know, kind of already there, and he's been amazing at that and fitting in and you know, bringing up some great ideas for us to get better.
So you have been called a beast by just about everybody, just because you're constantly winning, you're constantly up front, and we love to see it. Do you have a particular mindset that makes you that way, or is it luck, or what do you contribute to that?
You know, I think, you know, luck definitely plays into it here and there, but, you know, I think consistency, you know, shows the other side of that, and I think, you know, a lot of it's the team too. You know, we've been very successful together. You know, it's the most competitive team that I've ever seen, you know, through junior categories and even being a part of some others, you know, here and there. You know, for sports car drives or anything like that. So, you know, I think, you know, Chip is the most competitive person I think I've ever met. And, you know, just to see his dissatisfaction, I think when you do get it wrong or mess up, and, you know, it really drives, and you need it from the tops, you know, so it's, that definitely helps. But I think the key is preparation, you know, and we put a lot of hard work in, whether it was, you know, me, you know, training and trying to prep for this race, to the team, you know, making sure with, you know, the DIL and simulation days and all the off-season projects. So, you know, as a lot of us know, you know, going to a race weekend, 99% of, you know, how your weekend's going to play out is because of the preparation you've done. So, you know, we work hard and you try to be relentless, and I think that's what gets you a lot of great results.
Clearly paying off.
So speaking of another beast, your longtime friend and one-time teammate, Tony Kanaan, is retiring after this year. So Speak a little bit about what it's been like to race with and against TK for many years now.
Yeah, he's a great friend. Just got done actually training with him this morning at Pitfits, and yeah, I don't know. Like it was sad to see him leave the team. You know, he was a fantastic teammate, and you know, brought a huge amount of talent to the team, and you know, I raced against him for many years. You know, and he's a hell of a competitor. You know, super aggressive, and you know, one that we fought many championships for. So you know, to have him in house for a period there was a lot of fun, and you know, he's just a fun person, you know, so it's he's got a lot of energy, and you know, just a great guy to be around. So yeah, you know, it's a interesting year for him. I think, you know, all of us, it's an interesting year, but for him especially, when it was, you know, TK's kind of, you know, last lap, as he's been calling it, and you know, final year doing, you know, kind of like the last 4 or 5 ovals. Hopefully maybe that changes. I don't know. It's kind of, because he texted me before the Texas race, like, oh man, one more, you know, one last time at Texas. And I was like, come on, man, there's going to be more. You know, hopefully TK's last lap can go on for a few years. So, you know, we'll see how it rolls out, and see, you know, I think he's got some other opportunities in some different categories and things like that. But, you know, he's a huge part of IndyCar, you know, a huge, you know, figure for a lot of people, and what he's done for our sport. So, you know, hopefully he does hang around for a while.
Love it, and I agree.
Who has been the most fun person you've competed against over the years?
That's a tough, you know, I think because it's so competitive, you know, I would say that fun is not really the word that many of us use. Yeah, I don't know, like TK, I think is, you know, he's a lot of fun to be around. You know, I think when you get groups of like, you know, myself and Dario and TK and, you know, a few others, you know, Marco and you know, it's normally the kind of the crew. And Marco will probably get mad saying the older crew, because Marco's still not very, you know, not that old. But yeah, I don't know. TK, I think is you're always laughing. You're always, you know, your jaw's a bit sore from laughing so much after you go to dinner with him. So, you know, I think, you know, he's probably the guy you have the most fun with, which is unusual to say, I think, when you're in a competitive environment. But he's always a good laugh.
I love it. So, Scott, I'll wrap it up with one final question here. And Justin, I definitely appreciate your time this morning, and wish you the best of luck in 2020. Hopefully we're all out at the track soon. But of all the tracks you've raced in IndyCar, maybe that IndyCar doesn't go to anymore, is there one that you'd love to have return to the schedule?
Probably several. You know, just off the top of my head, probably Watkins Glen, Surfers Paradise, you know, Kentucky Raceway, Kansas, you know, a bunch of those, man. There's tons that, you know, I hope one day we get back to here shortly. But yeah, I don't know, even some overseas I think we should get to as well. Bathurst was crazy, and my probably all-time favorite circuit is Phillip Island, and just in the outskirts of Melbourne, or out of town of Melbourne in Australia. So yeah, but let's bring back Watkins Glen. It's always a good track for us.
I love it. So I have to ask real quick about Bathurst. Can you see IndyCar at Bathurst? I think I know the answer, but I'm curious to get somebody smarter's opinion.
I don't know. I doubt it. I think surface would be the likely choice, you know, first. I think Bathurst is, you know, it would be like saying, you know, could we get, you know, supercars to race at Indianapolis? You know, it's a cultural kind of difference in some ways. I think a lot of people in Australia would love to see that, but, you know, it's all about the Bathurst 1000 down there, which, you know, that history is built on. But there is a Formula 5000 race going to be held there, I think, later this year, maybe in December. I don't know if it's still on the cards. You know, I think they were trying to make it a real international race, and I think Felix was looking at doing it. I know we'd been talking about doing it, which would be the first time you would see a proper, quite quick single-seater car run around there. For a race at least. But yeah, I think coming across the top would be, you could have some pretty spectacular crashes there, and there's like a pretty big drop-offs, and I don't know. Yeah, it'd be interesting for sure. But, you know, the bottom part of the circuit is perfectly safe. I just don't know with the speeds of an IndyCar running around there would be, you could find yourself in some pretty crazy positions, I think. But it's an amazing circuit, and I was bummed that it took so long for me to get there and finally race earlier this year, but had a blast.
Yeah, it looks like an amazing place, but I definitely understand your concerns about the IndyCar speeds around there. So anyway, we will let you go. Thank you, Scott, very much for the time this morning. Again, best of luck in 2020, and hopefully we can see you on the top step of the podium a couple more times this year.
That'd be great. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No
Talk
problem.
soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.